welcome everyone once again to our second annual public webinar of this year. The first one was last month with the voluntary national reviews, and now we are talking together with very important speakers on regional forums on sustainable development for gender equality. I'm Shehnaz Kıymaz. It's a great honor to be with all of you and share this space with all of you. Before we begin, please let me remind you of some accessibility and logistics notes. We have interpretation to Spanish and French, so please go to the interpretation channel you would like to listen the meeting in. Even if it is in English, please do not remain in the off channel as it makes interpretation harder. You can also follow the chat directions that our colleagues Andrea have shared with you. Maitri and Andrea, Maitri Muzumdar and Andrea Vega-Troncoso will be our accessibility coordinators today. You can write to them at any point if you have any accessibility issues. This meeting will be recorded and shared in our YouTube channel later on as a resource. Today, so please, a last reminder, do not stay in the off channel. Select the channel you would like to listen the meeting in. And today and every day, of course, we stand in solidarity with all the feminists who couldn't be here and all the feminists who are resisting all forms of oppression and standing for the rights of the people and the planet. Another reminder that in all of the women's major group meetings, any discriminatory remarks will not be hate speech, denial of self-proclaimed identities, anti-rights discourse, and other forms of discrimination against folks and groups in these meetings who are speaking their truth will not be tolerated. After one warning, the person who, if any person utters such discriminatory remarks, after one warning, that person will be removed from Zoom. But without further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to our Latin America and the Caribbean organizing partner and the major groups and other stakeholders coordination mechanism co-chair, Mabel Bianco, to moderate our session today. Mabel, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shehnaz. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. It depends where you are. Welcome. Meanwhile, we have translation. I'm going to speak in English, but you know my language is Spanish, but let's speak English. And sorry for my friends for Latin America that they need to use the translation or the interpretation to listen to me. But I think it's better because if not, I make confusion moving from one language to another. Welcome to everybody, and thank you especially to our speakers and those that agree to be with us today. And as you know, since the last 3-4 years, I think, the Women Major Group, we are, as usual, claiming to improve how to consider and work the Agenda 2030 and SDGs. As all we know, the SDGs are all related. The agenda is a unique way to consider all together. Meanwhile, they have some specificities. So what we are interested and we are claiming is to have the approach to follow up it in a holistic way. What it means that not to separate as silos each SDG, but to consider as a whole, and especially based in human rights and women's rights, because this is the main point for the agenda. This is to ensure everybody has access to these rights and no one left behind. This is not mere some words, needs to be a reality. For those, we consider also our approach needs to be to take care, address, and try to change the structural inequalities in which they are based, and that limits the possibility that everybody have the rights or benefit of these rights that the agenda and SDGs try to make them able to everybody. But what happened? We suppose the pandemic was a great opportunity. What? To address these structural problems that in which are based the inequalities, and specifically the inequalities due to gender, to social status, and others. But we must say it was not so well used because we remain having the same problems and the structural issues were not reached. And this is something that we are very preoccupied. We also emphasize on the need to have or to give more importance to the regional forums that supposed to be preparatory for the high-level political forum, for the global one. But we know those regional forums are where countries are more related. They have more similar problems. And the economic office of the UN in each region also have opportunities to bring them together, to make them consider how to change, how to address something, and how to do things in order they could reach the targets and the goals that they are for each SDG. And also the relations among them and how they can learn lessons, and also how we as civil society and specifically women's group, we could be able to participate more easily, is in our region, is in our main language in general, so we have not so many difficulties in the language, and it's close. It's more easier for us in Latin America to go to a ECLAC office than to go to New York. That is expensive, it's difficult, and it takes a long time for us. So that's the benefit. And also because regionally, we could have, and we need to do that, the follow-up, because the agenda needs to be implemented and follow up this implementation all year long. It's not only a problem of the 2 weeks in the high-level political forum or in the regional. These are moments, but we have to do and to develop all year long the work, especially at country level. And this was more useful that at regional level, we could, as civil society and women's groups and human rights and women's rights defenders, be together with the governments. Some governments have the support of the economic office and work the long year at country level, and also including the UN offices at national level to support us and to work with us. This is what we try to do in Latin America and the Caribbean. And as I am the only Latin American and the Caribbean, and as you know, I'm the facilitator person or group for the mechanism for the civil society that we create in our region. We started to consider this in 2017. We discussed it, and finally we created officially in 2019. And we have been working hard with ECLAC, our economic office, and also with many governments to work together. What we could find, first of all, we are invited as mechanists to design in each place or moment, panel or whatever, one of our members to speak there. This is not only a problem to be a name in the program. It means how we work together, that name represent our things and our work. Second, we obtain from ECLAC and the governments that we are not considered the SDGs in isolation. We used to have 2 or 3 panels in which we consider different aspects from the agenda and SDGs, of course, making more important to those considered each year, but looking at them together. This, we think, is a good idea in a way how we want this to be done in the high-level political forum where we couldn't obtain that. But we continue working. So this webinar is so important because we are going to have the voice, first of all, of our key speaker, that is the person, Rosa Malango, and thank you, Rosa, to be with us, that she is the director of the regional commissions in New York office. So she is having the perspective of all the regional forums and how they are doing. We have also the voices from 2 of our main officers from the Europe and from the Asia Pacific Economic Office, that they are having their experience sharing with us. And we are going to have the voice from an Arab NGO and an African NGO. So that's why I take the responsibility to give you some of the information from Latin America and the Caribbean, because we are not anymore, only myself. So saying that, I hope we can start now with Rosa Malango. Please, Rosa, we are very, very interested to listen to you because you are going to tell about us how is the importance of the regional forums in preparation for the high-level political forum. Rosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And before I begin, señora Mabel Bianco, muchas gracias. Qué presentación.
Before beginning, Mrs. Mabel Bianco, it's such a pleasure. I would like to use the opportunity to speak in Spanish a little bit before entering and speaking in English. Mabel says, thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues from the regional commissions, other colleagues from the UN system, good morning from New York. Thank you for inviting me to share our perspectives on regional action to advance gender equality and the empowerment of women, specifically the opportunities provided by the regional commissions, the regional forums for sustainable development, and other platforms that the regional commissions of the United Nations support, lead, and organize. Allow me to begin by commending the role of the Women's Majors Group in bringing the voice of civil society organizations to intergovernmental platforms. Whether it's in the regional forums on high-level regional forums by the regional commissions or the high-level political forum here in New York. It is truly an honor and a privilege to listen to you and join you today. I also want to let you know that members of my team will also be listening. Now, permit me to very briefly introduce myself. My name is Rosa Malango, I am the director of the UN Regional Commission's New York office, a post that I've heard for a year. But this is almost year 30 of working with the United Nations. My assignments have included serving as UN Resident Coordinator in Uganda, as well as assignments in Guatemala, in Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire, Geneva, Mozambique, Angola. And I've also been responsible for operations and partnerships from headquarters, supervising every continent. My work has allowed me to work closely with private sector, civil society, governments, and communities. Now, as part of the UN Secretariat, the office that I'm currently heading in New York serves as a coordination hub for the 5 United Nations regional commissions around the world. We see the regional commissions as a think tank for the UN system. They undertake research, they generate policy to tackle the development challenges, but they also provide a safe space in each region for civil society, private sector, and governments to come together. The commissions also serve as conveners of intergovernmental and other multi-stakeholder platforms. And as subsidiary as the organs of the UN Economic and Social Council, the commissions play a very critical role in support of ECOSOC and the UN General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, a word on the world today. The world is currently beset by multiple crises, from COVID-19 pandemic to climate, to food, to energy crisis, to wars around the world, including in Ukraine. The escalating climate emergency, crushing national debt burdens are triggering a cost of living crisis, which is making the unequal recovery from the impact of COVID even worse. It's affecting lives and livelihoods around the world. These crises, we have noticed, are aggravating new challenges and old ones. In all of this mix, violence against women and girls has unfortunately intensified. And so too have the gender effects of humanitarian disasters, poverty, and climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, gender equality is at the heart of sustainable development. We must involve men and women equally if we are to effectively address the impact of the climate crisis, COVID pandemic, conflicts, both old and new. Unfortunately, according to our current data, the world is not on track to achieve gender equality by 2030. Actually, if we continue on the pace we are on right now, it will take us another 132 years to reach gender parity. So in this context, what can we do? We believe that it's imperative that we turn this current moment of crisis into a moment of opportunity to address the impact of crisis on women, to invest in the care economy, to promote more resilient and inclusive societies. The regional commissions are working to advance women's rights and developing regional agendas in line with SDG 5, as well as in line with the UN Secretary General's call in his report, Our Common Agenda, for transformative measures on gender equality, including facilitating women's economic inclusion in development through large-scale investment in the care economy. Before I conclude, allow me to share a snapshot of some of the work done in this area by the different regional commissions. So in Latin America and the Caribbean, we invite you to consult the outcomes of the recently held 15th Regional Conference on Women hosted by ECLAC in Buenos Aires. This was done under the theme, The Care Society, a Horizon for Sustainable Recovery with Gender Equality. During the conference, ministers and experts discussed how to reverse the 18-year setback and the levels of women's participation in the labor force, especially in lower income households. The conference was informed by indicators and analytical tools developed by ECLAC, Gender Equality Observatory for Latin America and the Caribbean, an innovative platform that oversees women's rights and empowerment in the region. In the Asia Pacific region, women bear the highest share of unpaid work and domestic care. According to ESCAP, an estimated $3.8 trillion could be added to the economy if the unpaid care work of women was added into the GDP measurements of the Asia Pacific. Against this background, ESCAP is working with women-led small and medium enterprises in several countries, including Bangladesh, Cambodia, Fiji, Nepal, Samoa, and Vietnam. They are promoting changes in laws and developing digital financing solutions in support of women entrepreneurs. Similarly, the unfair distribution of unpaid care work in the Arab region has been increasingly identified as a key barrier to women's economic participation. Women carry out 80 to 90% of all unpaid care tasks in this region. ESCWA is supporting countries with training packages, capacity building efforts to turn global commitments, including those in the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action, into regional and national policy. For example, ESCWA, in collaboration with UN Women and ILO, have developed an accountability framework to mainstream gender equality and the empowerment of women in national institutions. This follows following a successful pilot in Jordan, ESCWA is supporting the rollout of the framework by national women's platforms in 11 Arab countries. My apologies, my dog has decided to join me in the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, in Africa, the recent ECA report on digital finance ecosystems, pathways to women's economic empowerment in Africa, demonstrates the importance of financial access for women to promote economic, but also social and political empowerment of women. It also highlights the need to invest in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and education for women and girls. This is even more relevant as the digital economy in Africa is expected to reach 300 billion by 2025. As a result, ECA is focusing its capacity development programs on improving women's digital finance skills. Similar to other regions, ECA is supporting countries with gender equality index that helps to monitor and report on commitments. You can find examples in Eswatini, Ethiopia, Mauritius, Namibia, and Seychelles. In Europe and Central Asia, progress on the SDG 5 is also lacking. UNECE is supporting the integration of gender and care dimensions into the economic and social policies through regional knowledge products, such as the 2 regional studies. I'm sorry, 1 second. My kids have woken up and there's mass confusion. I'm gonna ask for 1 minute to sort this and then I'll come right back.
Please, if the interpreters ask, for all speakers, please speak slowly to make easy the work of the interpreters.
Mabel, would it be
Yes,
all right if perhaps we use this time to give a bit information on the women's, oh, Miss Malango is already there.
No, she's here. She's here.
Oh, you need
Thank
me?
you.
But can my colleague Yera perhaps also share with the interpreters my remarks? It will make it easier.
They ask if you can speak slower. Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
But the time also is close.
Okay, I'm about to end. So the last region was Europe and Central Asia, which is UNECE, where they are working to support integration of gender and care into economic and social policies. And this is done through national assessments. And the examples are in Kyrgyzstan, the Republic of Moldova, and Serbia. So in conclusion, we believe that it's critical that, as the moderator actually already said, you please leverage the regional platforms, existing review and report mechanisms, both inside and outside the UN, including the voluntary national reviews, in addition to our regional sustainable development forums, as an opportunity to discuss and push for solution on gender. As the UN Secretary General recently said, gender equality is not only a human rights issue, it is a fundamental prerequisite for a safer, more peaceful, sustainable, and prosperous world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Malango, and great you can review and give us a panorama of all the regional commissions and how are the status. And as you mentioned, gender equality still is very far. And the pandemic worsen the issues. And this is something that's why it's so important now that we consider SDG 5 not only a mere SDG, but a cross-cutting and real impacting all SDGs. And this is the challenge. And also you included and mentioned the role or the participation of the private sector and the academic. And I think we need to have this, but taking care that they are following the good way and not the particular interest that sometimes makes them difficult to advance at national, regional, and global level. Thank you so much. And now I invite Monika Linn. She is the principal advisor to the Office of the Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for Europe. Please, Monika, can you give an idea how are the relations among the regional and the global? The floor is yours.
Thank you very
Monika.
much. And I would like to ask Senas to run the few slides that I have prepared. And thank you first for inviting me to speak at this event. I'm very happy to do so. Well, good afternoon from Geneva. Good morning to New York, and good evening maybe to other places, to colleagues in ESCAP. And special greetings also to the members of our regional civil society engagement mechanism. I understand some of them are also in this call. And of course, me and my team look forward to work with them again for our next regional forum. Can I have the first slide, please? Yeah, so let me start by saying a few words about the importance of the regional forum for the 2030 agenda process and for SDG implementation, as you asked me to do. And I have identified 3 functions in this regard. First one you see on the slide is facilitation. The regional forum is sort of a national intermediary between the national and the global level work. The VNRs have already been mentioned, and of course, most implementation of SDGs needs to happen at the national or even at the local level. And then, of course, we bring the governments of our region and the stakeholders from our region together to facilitate peer learning and knowledge exchange across the region. Let me stress this, our member states put a lot of emphasis on being practical and focused on implementation in the regional forum, not to be repetitive with the in-depth review discussions that take place at the global level. So they put the emphasis on peer learning and knowledge exchange. And this happens through peer learning roundtables at our regional forums. And of course, the entire forum is multi-stakeholder, and also the peer learning roundtables involve not only governments, but stakeholders from the regions. And that, of course, includes civil society, major groups. On specification, I think this has been mentioned already by you, Mabel. The regional forum allows to focus on region-specific targets of the SDGs. Not all the targets have the same relevance for all of the regions. We are all very different, even within the region, of course, especially in our region, we are very diverse. So the priorities are different from one country to the other, and also from one region to the other. And I think the regional forum provides a good opportunity to bring out these regional specificities, and then discuss and exchange, and then make them known to the global level. Because as you know, the outcome of the regional forum provides the official input from the region to the high-level political forum. So there again, it gives us a chance also to discuss across regions, then in New York, but also to bring the regional perspectives into the global discussion. And then finally, what we are talking about here, stakeholder participation. So the regional forum is a platform for all sustainable development stakeholders, and that includes, of course, the major groups, It includes other international organizations, regional organizations, first and foremost, of course, our member states. It's a forum, and that means it's also meant for networking. And I think networking opportunities among the participants are also an important feature. There were so very much before we entered the area of COVID, where of course we needed to go to virtual meetings and networking is much more difficult there. But I remember back in 2019, we had about 800 participants in person in the conference center in Geneva, and that allowed for great networking. And in addition to stakeholders having a voice in the main meeting, I come back to that, there's also the opportunity for side events, for in-depth presentations and discussions. And this is used very much, not only by our governments, but also by the major groups. We had a particular one on SDG 5, for instance, because SDG 5 was in the focus this year. Next slide, please. Now let me just continue with SDG 5 and our regional forum. And there we have, I think, a very interesting feature that I would like to share with you. We organize the regional forum as our sister commissions as well in very close cooperation with the regional UN system, the regional collaborative platform, our partners, all the regional entities of the UN agencies, funds and programs. And a very important partner in this regard for us is the Regional Office of UN Women in Istanbul. And they have taken upon them at each regional forum, they watch very closely for each of the sessions how gender perspectives are integrated. And then they provide us with an analysis. And it's an entire report that is available on the website. I show it here, and this is just one slide from it. So they look at the participants in the forum. Is this gender balanced? What about the speakers? Speakers except SDG 5 session, where of course there were more women speakers than in others, maybe not of course, but there were moderators. And then they look at the substance of the discussions. And they found this year, for instance, that in 38% of the roundtables, gender equality and women's empowerment was not addressed. And 26% of side events related to gender equality and women's empowerment. Well, we had one chair this year, and it was a male chair. And they go into much more detail. They also go into the sessions and try to draw out practical examples that came from governments and other stakeholders on measures and policies for gender equality. And I think this helps us greatly. We're very grateful to our partners from Young Women to do this, because it helps us to improve. It helps us to see to what extent did we meet our objective of mainstreaming gender in all the sessions, and to have it as a feature of our forums, not only when SDG 5 is one of the SDGs under in-depth review, which was the case this year, but we will do the same for next year. And of course, we'll tell all the organizers of the different peer-learning roundtables to have the gender perspective integrated in the discussion, and also tell them that this will be monitored, and we will tell them afterwards how they have done. And yeah, so this is something I think that definitely helps us to strengthen the gender perspective in the regional forums. Next slide, please. So let me now come to our regional civil society engagement mechanism. And I think my colleague from ESCAP, who will speak next, will also mention this, because we have a similar setup in our region and in the ESCAP region, not only that we share a number of joint member states, but even some of the civil society stakeholders in this stakeholder mechanism, I think are the same from these countries. And this also makes, of course, for good cooperation. So what is this civil society engagement mechanism? Maybe members of it who are here may want to say something more later in the discussion. But basically, it's the institutionalization of participation of civil society in all the stages of follow-up and review of the SDGs in our region. And that means civil society for us is an integral part in the regional forum and in the preparations for the regional forum. So that means they are not only coming in the forum itself, but we try to involve them as early as possible in the preparations. through calls, through exchange of papers, through comments they can provide on the development of the agenda. Then, of course, they are in the meeting themselves, and they have speaking slots in each session. We try to connect them to the organizers of the peer learning roundtables, which are not organized, all of them by ECE, but sometimes by our partners who are the leading agencies on a certain SDG, so that they can connect to this constituency. They have speaking slots in the roundtables, in the high-level policy segment, and in the plenary session. And they can also submit comments on the meeting report, on the chair summary that we produce after the meeting. And of course, they have their own side events. And you see just this on the slide, stepping up to heal the historical responsibilities. That was the title of a side event that was held this year at this year's forum. We are also trying to financially support civil society to attend the regional forum. They can post their own documents on our website. We have a specific website for the regional forum. We try to be as inclusive as possible, and this was for the first time happening this year, that we had sign language, international sign language and captioning. And as I already said, we try to involve the RSEM as early as possible in the preparations. I'm not saying that this is perfect. We can still do better. Sometimes we got some complaints, they were not involved early enough, and we acknowledge that. Sometimes it's also just a matter of the capacity that we have in my small team. And of course, the more partners you have involved and the more multi-layered this meeting is, the more time-consuming becomes also the coordination. But I can just say we try our best, and we'll do so again for 2023. And we're trying to do better and take into account all the messages that we have received. Next slide, please. There is a specific civil society pre-meeting prior to each of our regional forums. It's already planned. Our regional forum next year is on 29 and 30 March. So we have reserved a room for the civil society pre-meeting for 28 March. And so this is where then the RSEM brings their members together, as many as possible in person and others on screen. They provide training and advice for groups that are new in the RFSD, develop common positions and collective strategies for advocacy, discuss monitoring of the SDGs and the specific regional challenges. Usually they also invite the UN agencies, the regional offices, and also member states to already dialogue with them, not only in the main meeting, but also in the civil society pre-meeting. And then finally they agree on the joint positions and nominate the participants in each of the regional forum sessions, who is representing civil society. So this is really selected by RSEM themselves. We, the Secretariat, are not getting involved. We just ask them, please give us in time the name of your speaker so that we can be sure that this is working out well the next day.
Mrs. Linn, the time
is... civil society pre-meeting. Sometimes we've also managed to have a special pre-meeting just of youth groups, and youth, we feel in the current situation, they should have an even stronger voice at the table, and we will try again also to ensure that for 2023. Now, the last slide. Thank you.
Your time is close, so if you can finalize, summarize.
Yes. This is just, and I think you might share this presentation. So this is just an overview of how our regional forum next year is shaping up, a 2-day forum with the SDGs and the in-depth review, with the first plenary session where we are not only focusing on the impact of COVID and the recovery from COVID, but our member states have wished to talk about the multiple crises that, of course, are particularly prominent in our region at the moment with the war in Ukraine and the impacts of it. Then again, you see the key of the forum are the peer learning roundtables, and then the second plenary session, we will be forward-looking and perhaps also try to discuss what we can contribute to the SDG summit that is taking place in September 2023. So thank you for giving me a little bit of overtime, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Monika. And really a very broad panorama. And of course, this year for you or next year is going to be a challenge due to the critical crisis you are suffering. Meanwhile, we are suffering everywhere, but you have directly in your region. So hope you can succeed and of course consider how to improve gender equality in this panorama so bad for everybody. Thank you so much. And now I want to invite Juliette Nicole Braslow. She is from the Economic Affairs Office in UNECE. And as we know, the regional forums have been a long experience in ISCAP. So we want to know especially how was the working and how was the relation about the civil society and specifically APRESENT and SCAP. How is this and what lessons you can give to us? Please, Nicole, thank you.
Wonderful.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to check that everyone can hear me all right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen here. And then let me know if that is showing in presentation mode. Great, and thank you again. There are lots of similarities, as my colleague Monika mentioned, among the ways that the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development includes the stakeholders, the women's groups, major groups and other stakeholders in the process. Many things that have worked really well, and we're also working on improvements too. So I first want to give a little bit of overview without giving too much a repeat, but really focusing starting at the national level in this engagement with the voluntary national review process that SCAP is involved in supporting countries with, as well as the element of bringing in the stakeholders into that process, really reviewing and follow up on the implementation of the agenda to help galvanize that stakeholder action and engagement. And then also at the sub-regional level. So there are 5 sub-regions in Asia and the Pacific that SCAP works in. And as preparation for the APFSD each year, there are sub-regional SDG forums that are held. And generally they are on topics of great importance in those sub-regions. And now this year are including a focus on the SDGs that will be under review in 2023. And then this all culminates into the APFSD to really share good practices, lessons learned, identify trends, and accelerate that action towards implementation. And SCAP is working and engaging with all of the major groups and other stakeholders as well, that is not limited to this, especially since the work through the Asia Pacific Regional CSO engagement mechanism includes additional stakeholders as well that are involved in the process. Now, APFSD is one key point of engagement, but it complements the other ways that SCAP is engaging with major groups and stakeholders. And this is in technical areas, in the research and writing, in this think tank capacity, really using the perspectives of reference and advisory groups as experts as well in expert group meetings, for example. In the intergovernmental processes such as APFSD to really provide that platform for sharing and partnerships and adding voices to the policy process. And then really coordinating networks. The APR-CEM, the Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, is really an important platform to facilitate this stronger constituency involvement and engagement with all of the other stakeholders, government, private sector, and the United Nations family as well. And to complement a bit of what Monika said, where there are many parallels, there are many ways in which APR-CEM works in a similar capacity and engages in a forum before the APFSD. In addition, there are members that serve as part of the reference group for the SDG profiles. These are the background policy documents that are developed for each of the SDGs that are under review every year, and these form the background documents to feed into the roundtables on each of these SDGs. So a similar structure as in ECE. And then we also have gender equality considerations in each of these profiles, and that are highlighted in each of the roundtables as well. Additionally, the stakeholders from across the region are invited to contribute to the plenary discussions at the APFSD, and the speakers are generally involved in the process of the People's Forum that APRSM organizes pre-APFSD, and help to carry those messages, those priorities that are decided in that group to the regional forum. And similarly, we also work to balance the representation, the perspectives, the gender perspectives in the panels, to try to also keep ourselves accountable to that, and our colleagues at UN Women really looking at those numbers, and to also make sure that there's space in the side events, the associated events, where these voices and perspectives can be showcased and have many opportunities to participate. So XCAP has this collaborative relationship with APRSM. Let me get that out of the way. And this is a really wide-reaching network in the Asian Pacific region. I hope some of you are here today in this call. And it really helps in our outreach and engagement as well in the APFSD. As I mentioned, in organizing this People's Forum, feeding in those priorities and key messages. And we're constantly looking for new ways for engagement, including in the sub-regional, for preparatory forum, trying to also incorporate more engagement and reference groups and inputs into the documentation processes as well. So some of the key messages from the APFSD process, some of our learnings from this engagement, from the focus on SDG 5, as well as the focus on women's empowerment in the partnership report. The SDG partnership report for the region include really a focus on women's participation in leadership, promoting those capacities in an institutional level. That's essential. Women's economic empowerment with gender responsive policies, really seeing this highlighted in some of these gaps exacerbated by the impacts of COVID, and how this really needs to be aligned with budgeting and innovative financing mechanisms. And then women's physical and digital protection, as we see our more digitalizing world, and ensuring that there is that protection to help bridge some of those gaps. And that these sub-regional perspectives, these fora, are really important for engaging on issues of gender equality and some of those key priorities that emerge within the sub-regional context. As many of the colleagues mentioned before, to really engage at that level, the sub-regional level, where there are similarities across the countries in the sub-regions and the challenges, but also potential opportunities and successes that have worked in other countries or other communities to really share at this regional level. So how can this engagement be increased to really mainstream and harmonize the perspectives, doing a lot more asking, really what do the stakeholders, what do the groups want, how do they want to be included and their voices to be heard, really understanding the stakeholder context and constraints, especially now with the crises and the still ripple impacts of the COVID crisis. And then building capacity, so really trying to put more emphasis on the capacity building elements and incorporating that into the regional forums as well. So just to give a little bit of a plug, the APFSD will be held the 27th to 30th of March in Bangkok. You can see more information on the APFSD 10 website. And we really want to focus on really reviewing the progress and sharing good practices and lessons learned strengthening partnerships and collaboration and accelerating progress towards the 2030 agenda. So thank you very much, and I look forward to more engagement, more ideas. I've already picked up some from listening to the other colleagues.
Thank you so much, Juliette, for your presentation that give us a great idea how you are working. And as you were one of the first group working regionally with the civil society and APRSM, is very, very important. And we are considering especially your experience on that. And thank you so much. Now, I want to invite Sayed Samad. Maybe I'm not having a good pronunciation, sorry. From the network, the Arabic NGO Networking to Development. Please, Sayed, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Ziad. No problem, it's fine. I work for the Arab NGO Network for Development, which is a regional civil society network. We are active since 1997 in the region and focusing mainly on social and economic rights. And that's why our name is Arab Network for Development. I mean, the processes are very similar, but our experience is a little bit bottom up. It's more than to be top down. I mean, definitely there is a close coordination and collaboration with ESQA, the Regional Commission for the West Asia, but the initiatives were initially taken by the network. It's worth starting by mentioning that in the region, as you already know, we are struggling with many challenges. Besides inequality, poverty, unemployment, many countries are facing armed conflicts and occupation as well, in addition to the weak democratic processes and the narrow space for freedom and civil society participation. And this reality prevents civil society from being active or actively participate in the national processes. Accordingly, the space provided by the UN is very important, whether at the international level, at the regional level, and even sometimes at the national level. And this is kind of a way to make the voice of civil society heard in a very difficult condition. I want to start by reminding with the Arab Human Development Report prepared by UNDP in 2002, where this report courageously identified three main obstacles delaying and hindering all the efforts, development efforts. First one was knowledge, definitely. But the second obstacle was democracy and the lack of space for civil society and freedom. But the third obstacle was gender equality. And it was considered as one of the main obstacles in front of development. Therefore, gender inequality is not a result of the wrong policies, but it is the root causes. It is the reason of all the challenges that we are facing in the region. And at least this was how it was identified in this Arab Human Development Report. And to add to this, I mean, beside the whole challenges that we are facing at the global level, at the regional level, it's also worth mentioning that the lack of security and military atrocities add to the vulnerability of women and the gender inequality. It's an additional layer. That's why we believe that improving the conditions of women participation and engagement is prerequisite for development. But more than that, it is an indicator per se showing the level of development and prosperity. When it comes to the regional processes, why I said that it's kind of a bottom up approach, because in 2009, the Arab Economic and Social Summit organized by the League of Arab States was a kind of an initiative to start discussing the challenges in the Arab region, where civil society was struggling and trying to get engaged, or to at least make the voice of the different societies in the Arab region heard, but this was not very obvious, and this was not very, allowed, at least to have independent civil society. And that's how we as a network, we launched the process of organizing kind of parallel events to prepare civil society perspective and to engage more in the regional debates about the regional challenges and course concerning the population in the region. So this was the very beginning, and then we had a series of summits in 2009, then 11, then the Arab Spring took place, and it was the whole process was delayed until we started in 2013 organizing the regional forum in coordination with ESCOA, but this was to engage in the ongoing discussion related to the post-2015 agenda at that time. So it was prior to the Agenda 2030 on sustainable development. It was about the post-2015 agenda, if you remember. So we started then in 2013, then 14, then 15, where we tried to deliver a civil society perspective through the commission to the governments in order to bring this civil society perspective to be taken into consideration in all the regional discussions and debates. The first civil society forum in parallel to the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development took place in 2016. It was in Beirut, and here it was organized in close coordination with ESCOA. It was a parallel event. And then we had another one in 2017, 18, and 19. But in order to enlarge, let's say, the constituency, we took the initiative to create a kind of a civil society, a regional civil society platform on sustainable development, formed by different regional networks covering different sectors. Women organizations represented by Kautar Center based in Tunis, labor unions represented by the ATUC, the Arab Trade Union Confederation, based in Amman. People with disability, they have an Arab Forum for people with disability. Democratic elections or democracy in general, with a regional network dealing with democratic elections, governance and transparency with TI, the Arab chapters of the Transparency International, Housing, Habitat International. So you see, it's covering almost all the different sectors, i.e. the different goals that we have in the agenda. And then it was kind of to enhance and to empower the civic engagement and participation. The first forum organized after the pandemic took place virtually in 2021, but and then the physical one last year in 2022, it was also in parallel. It's worth noting that civil society representatives were also invited to participate in the Arab Forum for Sustainable Development, the ministerial meeting, and then even given the possibility to participate on the panels, not only as participants, but as panelists, according to the, let's say, speciality or as experts, but also to participate in the debate and discussion. And we've been allowed also to organize the side events, many side events, not only one side event for civil society on different topics, etc. So this is how, this space provided by the UNESCO was given to civil society in order to approach directly the ministers and the government representative and the officials with this perspective. And sometimes or often it was with a very critical overview. if you want, I want to go to another dimension, which is the national level, because the regional level is very important, but the national level is as much as important as the regional level. And we grasp the opportunity of having the high-level political forum and the VNR process to go through national processes to prepare, because the VNR is a national report. It's not the report of the government, which means that it's supposed to reflect the multi-stakeholder vision, which is not true in the Arab region, which is not taking place. Or consultation can take place, but not effective consultation, not very inclusive consultation, very selective, not independent civil society whatsoever. And that's why we went through national processes in order to prepare alternative reports. And these alternative reports were the result of national processes. I mean, consultation with a wide range of civil society, inviting other stakeholders, private sector sometimes, official representative when it is possible, and many other groups. So we have the national report in parallel to the national voluntary reports. And here, in coordination with the major groups and with the Action for Sustainable Development, we managed to have to submit the alternative reports to the high level political forum, and even we even had a representative to deliver their speeches or submissions during the review of the country. So this is briefly what I can say about this.
Thank you so much, Siad, and really it was a great panorama of the long time fight in the region. And as you mentioned, the VNRs are very important as processes in which we need to have the civil society, the broad civil society involved, but also as Women Mayor Group, we want to have some VNR process at the regional forums. Why? Because there could be a better discussion, more fruitful, because the conditions are similar. But some point that is very important you mentioned is the security of the people speaking on those VNR sessions in order not to have any problem. And this is something very, very important. And in your region, it takes a great needs to be really done in a very safe place or methods. So thank you so much to bring this. And we continue working together as we did the last year through the mayor groups and preparation for the VNRs. Thank you so much. Now I want to invite Esther Kimani from Samara Foundation. Is an organization from Africa, and she's going to present us the importance of the African Mayor Group and Stakeholder Group participating in the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, specifically from a gender equality point of view. Esther, the floor is yours.
Thank
Welcome.
you very much. Well, thank you very much, moderator, Madam Mabel. Good morning, everyone. For those that are reaching out from, it's in the morning. Good afternoon. For those that are coming from Kenya, Nairobi, and Africa regions, and good mid-morning if there's anything that, that we can say. So as Mabel has mentioned, my name is Esther Kimani Wamboi. I work with Samara Foundation. And really, for me, is to really discuss and to just share perspective in terms of why, it's important to have, why the importance of the African major group stakeholders in participating in the, Africa Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. And maybe to just start with is to just say, we've had here as part of the larger women's major group, the African Women Major Group is organized as a movement of different stakeholders at different levels with different expertise. So which makes it so rich because we have, stakeholders from the grassroots levels. We have those at the national level and those at the global, at the regional level, at the African level. And the larger role of the African Women's Major Group is to really mobilize African women and girls to facilitate feminist and women's civil society organizations, active participation, information sharing, and input into the policy space at the regional level, which now when you talk about the regional level, it's the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And then of course, later on, to really ensure that the voices of young women and girls are heard at the high level political forum. So, as Africans, we cannot really achieve sustainable development change without the population of our continent, who for a long time are the ones that are, continuously living in different forms of oppression. And we know that patriarchy is already deeply entrenched within our society, and we need to ensure that our voices are loud, very clear, and we are able to really resist this. So how do we do that? We show up as the African Women Major Group at the regional forum in a way to say that, you cannot do business as usual without ensuring that the women's realities really matter, that women's voices and girls are part of the process. So we ensure that, it is important that then we are able to be part of this conversation in addressing the different effects of inequality African women and girls face. So why is it important for the African Major Group in the first place? Of course, someone can say, oh, we already have the Women Major Group at the global level. So why do we still have to self-organize within the regional? And I think it's important to also mention that for us to effectively participate in the regional forum, we need to be able to have a collective voice. And we can only have a collective voice when we are also organized. And organizing ourselves through the African Women's Major Group is in a way to ensure that then we hold our government to account. We know that our government has signed on to different conventions and treaties, but we know that the implementation is not realized. And we also know that the high-level political forum is a voluntary process. So governments decide if they are going to report on how they're implementing Agenda 2030. And where does it start? It starts at the regional level. And for us, as we organize and we have this collective voice, then we are able to really hold them to account. And the work of, African Women Major Group and stakeholders is to ensure that then we not only participate into the ARFSD. Sorry, when I say ARFSD, is the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. It's also an opportunity for us to, meet together and I think other speakers have also mentioned, to really network together and to also ensure that then we are speaking the same language based on our lived realities, and then we are able to actually influence the outcomes. African women, girls, feminist stakeholders are already experts of their own issues. And, when the government convene at times, they kind of forget, allow me to use that word, they kind of forget that the people who are experiencing these issues are actually experts of their own lives. And it is in, coming together and the decisions they make when it comes to gender equality really affects those that are actually living through those lived realities. So it is in ensuring that then in collective voice, then we are able to really remind our governments, most of the time is to remind them that we are here, these are our issues, and we are able to really speak out on them and ensure that as they come up with these outcomes, that the outcomes really reflect on the discourses, on the lived realities of African women and girls. And I think, the other speakers have also mentioned, the regional and global spaces at times are very disconnected. And you find that if you're engaging from the first time, you will kind of feel lost in this place. So that's where the African Women Major Group comes in to really bridge in this gap, to ensure that there exists a deeper understanding on how the African Women Major Group really contributes to the African Forum, or African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, and of course, later the high-level political forum. And also being part of these African women major groups, it also gives an opportunity for us to strategize together, to meet together, at the same time, to have like a common understanding before going to the to the global level. The other aspect about the African Women Major Group is that it also helps in build capacity of African women and girls to really understand, the feminist approaches. What are the principles of, feminist principles of organizing? And what are the feminist ways of advocacy when it comes to policy making processes and also decision making? And also this, to say this, also supporting, African women to participate in these regional forums. As other speaker has mentioned, going to New York might be so expensive, but then again, maybe going to a different African region, country is a bit cheaper. So it means that if we are able to support each other and support the participation of women and girls to the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development through the African Women Major Group, then we are able to really influence that process, but at the same time influence the high-level political forum. And lastly, I can say that, African women and girls narratives, which I've also mentioned, and challenge African women, girls, and gender-expansive persons, narratives, issues, challenges, and solutions need to be brought forth by the African women themselves. And that's why we appreciate, of course, the Women Major Group and the fact that then we have the regional ones that will continue to ensure then all these voices of women, girls, and gender-expansive persons are heard in these political making processes. So then, you might be asking yourself, oh, we do this amazing work. So how do we do it? We ensure that we strategize to join the different drafting groups into the different review goals that are being reviewed to ensure that then, the messages and the key priorities are reflective of, the issues, and also the language is much more stronger that it encompasses when it comes to ensuring that then we reach our goal, which is, of course, gender equality. We also work together to develop statements ahead of the African Regional Sustainable Development Goals, and somebody else has mentioned also to feed into the key priorities and messages. And also prior to COVID, we shared ourselves to the different influencing group language so that then we can get an outcome that really speaks to the key priorities and what it is that, women and girls are going through the different goals that are being reviewed. And also lastly is that we position ourselves for interventions at the plenary using the position statements that we've already made. It's not enough to just, organize to meet and ensure that then we have this strong statement and positions and the language that is strong. We need to also ensure that then we are able to pass those messages. So how do we do that? We ensure that then we position ourselves in plenary and ask for opportunities to be able to make interventions using the position papers that we've already had. And you also, using the different messages that, different groups, drafting groups have gone to the different, goals that are there. And I think one of the things that I must say is that also the other way that we also participate, which also many of the other speakers have already mentioned, is to really work together to host side events with partners who are part of the Women Major Group and, of course, who are part of the African Women Major Group. And, of course, in 2022, we were able to really have one with partners like KRIA, Kina Mama wa Africa, and Malala Fund. So for us, the African Women's Major Group is very important because at least it able us to really facilitate young women and girls, women and girls in all their diversity to participate in the regional processes, is able to help us build capacity building because then, we know these policy making processes are complex. At times it's really difficult for you to even understand. And you need someone to be able to understand.
Esther, you need to finalize time.
Yeah, just one point and I'm done. And I think the last bit is to make sure that, stakeholders participate meaningfully. Yeah, thank you very much. And the African Regional Forum will be held 25th February to March 2nd, 2023. Thank you in Niger, Naim in Niger. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry to let you know
No,
the
it's
time,
fine.
but we need to have some minutes it's difficult, very short time for questions and answers. But first of all, we consider that all presentations were so good and related, each one, that give us the idea how regionally and nationally, as many of you mentioned, we are working to make a reality that the agenda is implemented. We have some comments or questions that I want to leave for the last round of all of you, or what you want, about the issue of how in the BNOs we could not only consider always SDG 5, but also 10 and 16, as was mentioned by Isha, I think I mentioned well, and also how is the time allocated for CSO, because we know that in the high-level political forum is a great discussion about the short time we have. So additionally, we could have more time, and this is what most of us, we are asking. So thank you, Isha, for your comment. And maybe some of you can give us some information. Also, there are some comments about how to improve work. So we are going at the end to invite some of you that you are not yet in the Women Mayor Group to be with us. And I think, Hannah, you have your hand up. Could you make a very short question if you want to do a question, or why is your hand up? Sorry.
Yes,
Hannah?
Yeah, do you want me to go now? Yes.
Yes.
So thank you
short
for this meeting.
Short.
Today, I'm Hannah Gunnarsson from WCF. I'm also part of the regional civil society engagement mechanism for the ECE region. So it was really lovely hearing from everyone today. It was nice hearing from Monika as well. I'm going to talk to her next week. But it was interesting to learn from other regions. So there's several things I really like with our region. I agree with Monika that when we come and meet in person at the UNECE, it's an excellent place for networking. And with COVID, unfortunately, that moved back a lot. But I know that UNECE was working quite close with us throughout. But what I've learned from other regions, and I think what we will bring up with Monika in the future, these sounding boards for civil society that we heard from the AP-RSEM region and the African region, I think that's a really excellent idea. So bringing in civil society experts to give input on, for example, the agendas of the regional forums or the gender action plans of the UN Commission.
Hannah, please.
Yes,
please, could you finalize?
But
Yes.
so my question, or my ask for everyone from UN Commissions today was just we continue the discussions afterwards, and we really need to we need some help in ensuring that the regional forums are inclusive, diverse, and that civil society are engaging from the start of the forming of the agendas of the regional forum. So they are upholding human rights. That's it.
Thank you so much. And I think we can give any of you, if you want, only 1 minute to add something about this issue, about how to make more effective the CSO participation at national and specifically regional level, that were some questions here. Who wants to speak? Short, 1 minute each, please. Who wants to start, or no one? Rosa, could you,
I can
are
see
you still with us?
two
Okay.
hands raised, huh? Augustina and Nicolene.
Yes, but I want them, we are not able to make more questions. If you want, write on the question and ask, and this is only for our panelists to have the opportunity to give a very short 1 minute addition, if anyone wants.
Yes, if you allow.
Yes, please, go ahead.
My comment is about the goals. I mean, the value added of the Agenda 2030 is the political declaration and the political commitment. While at least this is our vision in the region, the SDGs is, it's to minimize, I mean, the importance of the political declaration. So that's why we don't like to go to this fragmented agenda when it comes to the goals by goal. Heidi, on one hand, but on the other hand, when we are talking about gender equality, it's not about the goal number 5 or 10 or 16 or whatsoever, but I think that it's a cross-cutting issue wherever. So it's about poverty, it's about food security, it's about education, it's about climate, it's about everything. In all the goals or in different aspects of the agenda, you have the gender dimension, which is there. So that's why in our perspective, we have, it is a cross-cut. Definitely we focus on gender equality and discrimination, but also it is, and it should be perceived as a cross-cutting everywhere. So I wanted to make this comment only. It's a substantive, it's not a procedural. So thank you.
Yeah, but it's very clear that you share what we mentioned, that the women mayor groups, we consider necessary to have a holistic approach and not fragment. Juliet, please. Juliet Braslow, please.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for any background noise there might be. I think from my end, it's really working towards more engagement in the planning process. So not just after, saying you do yours forum, we'll incorporate the voices, but in the planning and also as experts, as was mentioned, that the major groups, women, they're the experts in their own lives and their own challenges and decisions. So really trying to bring that in, whether it's through into some of the formal processes. And then also providing tools for data on really making sure that countries aren't leaving anyone behind. And we are working with some countries now with some of these tools, using actual country data to really get a handle on that and incorporate that into the VNRs where governments are willing to do that.
Thank you so much, Juliet. And I don't know if Rosa Malango is with us.
Miss Malango,
do you want to?
Miss Malango had to leave for another meeting. Miss
Okay,
Ortiz
but it's
writes to
Monika
us.
Linn.
Yeah,
It's Monika Linn trying to speak. Monika, please.
Yes, thank you, Mabel. I think it's always good to have these exchanges also to learn from each other and to see what different approaches we could take. And as I said, nothing is perfect and we can always improve. And just also replying to Hannah, one of our main partners in our civil society engagement mechanism, of course, we can look for ways to have something, I think it was called sounding board. I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but definitely we are ready to explore in whatever way we can strengthen civil society participation throughout the process, before and during and after the forum. There was also, I think, some remarks on importance of civil society participation in the VNRs. I mean, I couldn't agree more to that. And this is also something we have more focus, I think, on the VLRs in our forums and the local level, which comes more and more also to the forefront, because of course a lot of implementation is happening not even at the national but at the local level, and there also, of course, the stakeholders should be involved. Of course, it's entirely up to governments how they structure the process. You have the handbook, you have all the guidelines from UNECE, but in terms of advocacy, definitely it is very important that the VNRs include increasingly more and more stakeholders. And I think some countries in our region try this even through new electronic platforms. They really try to reach out more and more. Of course, in the end, it comes down both to the political will and also to the capacities of the respective organizers of the VNR. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monika. And as we have no more time, I want to make a last comment, because Shanta from Nepal was telling us about the problem we have with our reports, that what we call alternative or whatever, we are not able to put at the high-level political forum to be disseminated officially. So we do through the Women Mayor Group, web, and so on. But I think it's very important that regionally we could fight for this, and we could have at least in the regions all these alternative reports presented and make able to everybody to know them, because it's a loss of efforts not to have this possibility. So thank you, Shanta. And this is something we are fighting with UNECE and the high-level political forum people, but it was not possible till now. So as Shenas put in the chat, for those of you that wants to be working and being more active with the Women Mayor Group, please be member of us. Write to where I think Shenas put in the chat how to write to them and to have the possibility to be members, and we are going to work together. So thank you so much. I think it was a great discussion. It's going to be recorded and also disseminated in the 3 languages. So we are going to be able to share with some of our friends that we are not here. And of course, we will continue working together for the regional forums and also for the global, the high-level political forum. Next year is very important because we have also after that the summit of the SDGs. So thank you so much, and bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Mabel, for your incredible moderation, as always, to all our speakers and our amazing interpreters as well, who patiently interpreted all of the heavy terminology that we use in the SDG work. I just also wanted to note in the end that Maitri and Andrea, our lovely colleagues, have shared a link to the current information we have on the regional forums for 2023, the dates, the regional civil society engagement mechanisms. So please take a look at that. They will be updated as we have more information. So this only has the information that we could access until now. So with more information, that page will be filled as well. Thank you all so much. And we're very sorry for the questions we couldn't take due to the time. But please write to us. We'll always be very happy to share any information that we have with all of you. Once again, many thanks to our incredible panelists and moderator.
Wow.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.